guys, Samantha from Samantha Tutorials here, and today I'm going to show you a cute project based off of a little experiment that I was doing the other day. Now it's going to be quite different from this, but I was looking through my old beads and this was what sparked my interest. So you're going to need some black and white polymer clay rolled out to about, I'd say about 2 millimeters thick. That is my second setting on my pasta machine, but it might be different for your machine. So 2 millimeters thick is about the right thickness. I'm just quickly going to trim up these edges over here because I want it to fit on my piece of rinsing paper that I have here. Okay, and take another piece of paper, and I want you to give this a good burnish, like so. And this is just going to remove fingerprints. It's going to remove any marks the pasta machine might have left when you were rolling it out, and just will in general give us a nice smooth finish. Okay, so that's good for now. Now I'm going to be using these cutters over here, and they're my Cleopatra cutters, and I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is just my small set, not the full set. And I'm going to be using all 4 cutters. So these ones are going to be black, and these ones are going to be white. So I'll show you what I mean in a minute. So I'm going to start with the black, and I'm going to start with my largest cutter. And I'm going to make a mark. And I'm going to trim as close to that as possible, but at the same time I'm going to be leaving a border. So I'm not sure if you can see that on the camera, but there, if you look there, I've made a mark, but I've got a little border around it. Okay. And you just need to worry about that for the sides. The front, the top and bottom, you don't really have to worry about leaving an exact border, just leave a little bit of space. So that's my largest cutter, and I only need one of those. Then I have these ones left. This one's going to be a white one, so I'll put that to the side, and I'm going to go down to this one, and I'm going to use 2 of those. So make a mark, and make another mark, and I'm going to cut those out the same way I did this one. Okay, and so you should be left with these, which were made with this cutter and this one, and there should be a large cutter in between and one left. Okay, so take those out the way and put these off to the side. We will use them in just a moment. We now are going to bring over the white, and I'm going to be cutting out 2 of the large one here. So I'll make an imprint like so, and 2 of this one, which is a small one. Okay, and then I'll show you how this all works once I've cut those out the same way I did the black ones. Okay, so I'll bring over the black ones, then the 2 largest white ones, and they should fit in between, like so. And I want you to piece them together like I am doing right now. And as far as these borders between the actual imprint of the cutter, it should be under a millimeter wide. And there we go, and we've roughly got them together. Now what I'm going to do is I'm very carefully going to just give this a very light burnish. I'm not going to be burnishing this too much. Give it a very light burnish, just to smooth out any fingerprints that you might have introduced. And then I'm going to bring over some mint leaves. Now mint leaves are fairly easy to get hold of in the grocery store. You can use any herb leaves, so things such as sage, parsley, basil, all those things will work. I like mint the best because I find that the veins on the underside are really pronounced, which is something that I like. And so I tend to use mint leaves in my leaf projects. But if you have a garden, you can also use any generic leaf that you like out there, so feel free to do that as well. And all I want you to do is I want you to take these leaves and just space them out like so. You can have them overlapping these pieces, and that is why I went to so much trouble making sure they kind of link together in so many words, rather than just making like a sheet of white, putting a bunch of different leaves on it and then cutting out the shapes from that and then doing the same with the black. I want it to be obvious that the leaves are overlapping and that this is one whole piece once we have cut it out. So just continue pressing the leaves in whatever pattern you find pleasing. And then when I am done with that, I'll show you what the next step is. Okay, and then once you've got them all laid out in a position that you like, grab another piece of plain printing paper, and this time I want you to burnish quite thoroughly over the entirety of the piece. And this is just going to burnish those leaves into the clay and really get them nice and embedded in there, get their imprint onto that clay in a nice sharp fashion. Just get all the possible detail that we can out of these leaves. And I know that you can't smell it because, well, you're watching this on a video, but the mint leaves smell wonderful. It definitely adds a extra element to the project. It's really quite nice working with the clay when it smells like mint. There we go, and I'm just giving a quick look. If I see one that I don't feel has been burnished as well as it could be, I will go over it and reburnish. And this should also have removed any marks from your clay. If you see any marks, get rid of them now. It should be a perfectly uniform effect on the clay, so if you can see shiny spots, things like that, remove them as quickly as you can. Okay, so now comes the somewhat tricky part. I would recommend getting a needle or a needle tool. So just bear with me for a moment while I grab mine. There we go. And I generally will go for the leaves around the edge of the project first and grab those, because those ones are the easiest to remove. And you just want to use your needle tool to kind of pick it up, and then you should grab it with your fingers. And try to limit as much contact with the clay as possible. Now once you've removed all the ones from the outer edges and you're left with the ones on the inside, I would recommend starting by the stem, because it's already got a pretty deep indent, and if you make a little mark over there, most of the time you won't actually end up seeing it. Some you won't be able to use the stem, but in general that's where I like to go from. And that's the easiest spot to get. And then just continue lifting all your leaves like so until you're left with no more green parts. Okay. Now let me move this around. Hopefully there you can see it's very difficult to see when the clay is like this. We haven't highlighted it, but there I hope you can see there all the leaf patterns. And so now the next step is going to be to take our cutters and to lay them over our imprint that we made. Just making sure that I've got that right spot, and cut them out. And now you are going to have a slight border around each piece, obviously, but we're going to be probably putting beads in between each of these pieces, so a gap is going to be implied, but I do just want them to be, so it's fine that we have a slight gap between each of the leaves and it's not absolutely perfectly close together, that's fine, but it is close enough. And just continue doing that until you've cut out all your pieces. Okay. Then it's the last one. that to the side and we can talk about that in a moment. I am actually going to bring over a clean piece of paper and transfer these over. And try to not touch the fronts as much as possible. Just making sure that they line up. That one doesn't line up. So this one goes here. And you can see which ones go where by if the leaves line up. And that is what we have at the moment. So that now needs to go into the oven for at least 40 minutes at your brand's recommended temperature. I'm using Polymer, but you can use any brand for this that you want, so long as it doesn't have a texture, because then it's going to take away from the leaves. But yeah, you can use any brand. I am going to be using Polymer today. Right, so that goes into the oven for at least 40 minutes, and this, since I know that clay is pretty short at the moment, because we didn't burnish it perfectly together, you should be able to separate these parts and not end up with waste. Now this is not got pure white, obviously, so I would use it with projects where you do not need it to be pure white, and if it does stick, that part would have to go in with leftover clay. Because we did make sure that there was very little border. Yeah, you can save most of this clay. So that one's going to have to go in with the scraps. And scraps you can use with a bunch of different things. I have a bunch of different scrap tutorials, so be sure to check that out if you have leftovers like this. But yeah, you can save pretty much all the clay. And yes, you've got little black bits on this, so you're going to have to use it with some mixed media or something like that. But still keep it. So we'll come back once those main pieces are baked. Okay, so here they are out of the oven. Now we do need to apply backings, and I've done that for the white. So here's the backing, and you can see here I have a bit of a leaf pattern on there. And I'm going to show you how to do that with the black. So let me just pop this to the side. Have another piece of paper and some black clay. And this has been rolled out to about roughly about 2 millimeters thick as well. And I'm going to take some translucent liquid clay and just give it a moment to come down. This bottle's almost empty. And I'm just going to rub some of this liquid clay onto my sheet here. And because it's translucent, it doesn't matter that I'm putting it onto the sheet of clay. It's not like it's going to change the clay's colour in any way. It might make it a little softer, which is generally speaking a good thing. However, if your clay is pretty soft, you don't even need to use liquid clay most of the time. But basically the scraps you can just mix the liquid clay back in. And I'm just going to smooth that over the surface so it's nice and sticky. Then grab the same shape cutters that you used before and cut out the right number. So one of my largest ones, and I generally cut my lips over the cutter and blow, and that will break the seal. That way I don't have to touch it. And that's a nice way to get out of the cutter, because it's not going to stick to the paper because that's a non-stick surface, so it's going to stick inside your cutter. But it doesn't actually stick to the cutter very well. And the liquid clay is not helping. Okay, and one more of those. Go. Put that to the side. You can just mix that back in if you want. And then I'm going to grab my cutters, or not cutters, beads that we made, and flip them backside. And actually, before we apply the liquid clay, just go over and make sure that you don't have any messy sides, like there you can see. So what I will generally do is I'll just take my craft knife and just trim those edges. And I'm actually going to do that on all of them. Okay. I'm just going to flip them around. Take my clay, put it liquid side down to all of them. And now if it doesn't sit completely right, that's fine. I'll get to that in a moment. I'll just peel it up and replace. And don't worry about fingerprints at this point either. Okay, then each one you're going to take and you're going to squish that down properly so that the clay smushes over the edges. And then take your finger and just flick off those edge pieces, like just smush it off. And you'll get this excess clay, which can just be mixed back with whatever colour it is. And there you go. Then run your finger along to smooth. Like so. And repeat with the others. And there we go. Now, what I like to do now is you can either use real leaves, or to make it easier, you can actually use these kind of scrapbook natural skeleton leaves. And I've got a whole bag of them over here. And these work really well. Now, the only thing that I need you to do is when you use one leaf for the white, do not use the same leaf for the black, because clay will get stuck to this, and so if you take that and transfer it to a different color, you will find that color will transfer onto your clay. So make one for black and then another one for the white. And I'm just going to stick that down and get as good an impression as possible. And then lift that up, and it should give us a leaf pattern. And smooth your finger along those edges because it might have caused them to squish out a bit. There we go. And then repeat that for these other two. Okay, and there you go. Now all of them should have a nice backing on them. Now I'd recommend putting those into the oven for at least 20 to 30 minutes before we move on to the next step to get that back hardened. Now 20 to 30 minutes is not going to cure the back properly, but we are going to do one more bake after this, so it's fine. But I want it to be in for about 20 to 30 minutes, just to make sure that it's cured enough that it is strong enough for the next part of the process. Okay, and there we go. So there are the backs. Now I want you to grab some isopropyl alcohol. Anything above 50% will work. I'm just going to get rid of the blacks. The blacks are not going to be involved in this next process, so get them out of the way. You don't want them there. And I'd recommend working on a piece of paper just to absorb the excess alcohol ink that we're going to be working with. And this is optional, you don't have to do this, but I think that it's going to make a really nice dash of colour. What we're going to do is we're going to take some red and oranges and yellow alcohol inks, and we're going to splash that over the surface of our pieces here. And then after we have baked that, we are then going to antique this black to highlight the leaves. And the black, we are not going to put alcohol ink, we are going to just highlight those with white paint. Well, these have black paint. So if you wanted to and you didn't want the red alcohol ink, you could always just highlight these with black paint, but I think the alcohol ink's going to look nice. And if you don't put the alcohol ink on, you really need to be careful to make sure that these are pure white. Okay, so I'm just going to give these a quick spritz, and that's just going to wet them and make it easier for us to move our ink across the surface. Now any selection of red inks will work, but I'm using Poppy Field and let's see, Crimson. So you can't really see that one very well. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop one drop of each colour onto the surface. And now this is going to get messy. So don't expect it to not be messy. And I want to just rub that over the surface. like so. And you could wear gloves at this point if you didn't want the ink on your hands, but I really don't mind. Just make sure you get everywhere. Okay, and brush along the sides as well. We want the sides stained because if we have pure white sides and a coloured back and front, it's going to look a little strange. So just make sure to brush around the sides. And we will do the back in a little while once we've taken care of the front, but we can't do it right now because otherwise we'll remove the ink from the front. Alright, and there we go. I'm just quickly going to grab a wet wipe, or a baby wipe I guess some people call it that. Okay, and then all I'm going to do is I'm going to move this to the side quickly, grab essentially a wet rag would work, just pop that down. And what you can do to save on inks is you can actually take some of the ink from here and you can brush that over the surface of this, getting all of that white. There we go. Okay, do the same here. Now you might have to use some extra inks to coat it, but generally you should be able to grab enough alcohol ink from the fronts of your pendants to clean up the backs with some ink. Just make sure to get all the white spots. Okay, and I'm just going to continue colouring these backs quickly, and then when they're done I will show you what they look like. Okay, and there we go. It actually still looks a little bright. There we go. Right, now I'm just going to take this and I'm just quickly going to wipe the surface of these and just rub the front and the back of your piece quickly. And this is going to take off any surface ink, and it's just going to leave kind of a ruby stain to it. I'm just going to grab another one and I'm going to do a more in-depth clean now on the fronts, just to make sure that I do get rid of all of that excess, because I just want the stain. Do that along the sides as well. So you end up something like that. Repeat with the others. Okay, and there we go. Now I'm going to take some alcohol pens, and you could use alcohol ink, just normal alcohol ink droppers, and paint it on, but I find that these do a better job. Can be more precise really. Now all I'm going to do is I'm just going to make these kind of light streak patterns on the surface. It's not supposed to be a huge difference. And I've got a few different colours. This one's kind of a orange colour. Here's another one. And this is just going to be adding different tones to the piece. And just go through as many colours as you want. I've got about, I'd say about 3 total. Just go through and streak that kind of orange yellow effect through, and that's just going to give it a slight colour difference. And remember, when this bakes, it lightens. That's something that I do tend to forget when I'm working with alcohol inks. It gets absorbed into the clay. So just make sure that your colour saturation is high enough. You should want it to look lighter after it's come out of the oven. So just bear that in mind. There we go. done, and then there's one last thing that I would like to do. Okay, and I'm just going to see quickly if little dots makes me feel happy. No, they don't make me feel happy. I'm going to just go with stripes. Alright, so once I've streaked all of them, like so, we're going to pop those into the oven along with our black ones, because remember the black ones' backs also have not baked through fully, and we're going to bake them for at least another half an hour at your brand's recommended temperature, and then when they're out we can antique them with paint. Now you have to bake the alcohol ink before you work with paint because it will mix into the paint. Now I'm not sure if you can see how well that is. It looks like a very bright red to me, but I hope that the camera is picking up the detail there. And now you can do the same thing on the back, but I'm probably going to leave the back as is. Okay, so they are out of the oven, and here is basically how it looks. And I'm really happy with how it's turned out. It looks really quite nice. So now what we want to do is we want to antique them. So I'm actually going to start out with the black ones, because these ones you can see the leaf pattern quite well. So I want you to be able to see the leaf pattern on these ones, I think. So we're going to be using black paint for the red ones and white paint for the black ones here. Excuse me. Now I'm actually going to be using a brush. No, I'm not going to be using a brush because it's white paint. I'm just going to pop a little bit on. Okay. And now because the back also has a texture, I want you basically to rub the paint over the surface of the front. And then I want you to also do the same on the back. And you can use a brush if you want, but I'm going to use my fingers. I always use my fingers. I just always tend to do that. Okay. And then I'd repeat the process with the other two, and only then would I come back to clean this one up. Because I want this paint to kind of dry before I try to wipe it off. Okay, so I've got them all over here and I have painted all of them. So now we want to move on to the next step, which is going to be to rub off that paint. So I apologise in advance for the colour of this rag, but this is the one that I used to scrape off paint, and so it's a scrap rag. So I apologise for the colour, but there's not a lot I can do about that. Grab the first piece that you did, and it should the paint should be sticky by now. And I want you to start just rubbing with the rag. And now use a dry rag, don't use anything wet, because that will get the paint wet and then it will smear all over the place and it just won't look that great. Now we can clean that up in a minute because it's not very crisp. Right now we want to just get rid of as much of that paint as possible. Now if it is giving you trouble and isn't rubbing off, I mean it's doing alright at the moment, what you can do is you can take some isopropyl alcohol. The higher the concentration you can get, the better in this case. Just give your cloth a little spritz, and because this is alcohol it's not going to mix with the paint because the paint is water based and the alcohol is alcohol based, and this is a great way to clean it up as well because it will remove all the paint that is not in the cracks. So if you have a look at the front here, you'll find that that cleans up the surface a lot better. And repeat this with all of them. Be careful with the ones with the alcohol ink because you'll find that the alcohol does remove some of the red alcohol ink. So do be careful, don't go overboard with that. But with these black ones you can use as much as you want. And once I have finished rubbing them all down so that they're nice and clean, we can move on to the next step. Okay, and there we go. That is how it should look. Now I want to continue tidying this up a bit. So I'm going to bring over a 800 grit polishing paper, and this is optional, but all I want to do is I just want to give the surface a light rubber. Now I might need to go down a grit. I want to just see if this is going to remove anything for me, and no, it's not. So I'm going to go down to 600 grit and dry that again. And that's removing some stuff. And I'm just going to do that because I want, first off, just to kind of give it a more organic edge, because I don't want the alcohol ink to all look the same. So by just kind of giving it a quick sand, you're going to be lightening up a few areas, and you're just going to be cleaning up some areas as well where the paint is still on there. Okay, and it's just as simple as that. And I'm going to repeat with all of them. The black, I'm actually going to do a much more heavy sand. Not so heavy that I'm going to remove the texture of the leaves, but enough that it's, you know, black on white. So if I sand this edge, hopefully you can see there the difference. And I'm only going to be using a 600 grit. I'm not going to be going up to give it a polish. We're going to give it a light buff with some Renaissance wax to seal later on, but I am not going to be working really hard to give this a heavy shine. I just want to clean it up so that those colours really pop. Okay, and here is how they should look. Now you could leave them just like this, they're quite pretty the way they are. But I'm going to be sealing in that paint, and I am also going to be giving it a light shine by buffing it up with some Renaissance wax. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to buff the main one first. Just grab some wax. You only need a small amount. Run that over the surface. And bear in mind, once you put this wax on, you cannot put any other sealers on unless you sand off the wax, because the wax will prevent other sealers from sticking. So just make sure this is what you want before applying it. Okay. Then I'm going to grab my buffing tool, which is a 3000 Dremel, or Dremel 3000, and I'm going to buff it. Now this makes a bit of noise, so you might want to turn down the sound a bit. And there we go, so you can see there, it's got a nice sheen to it. Now if you don't want such a high sheen, what you can do now is you can take a wet rag and just gently run over the surface, and this will just dull down that shine a bit. It's not going to take it away completely, and it's not going to rub off the wax, but it's just going to dull the sheen a little bit. And just quickly dry that off. I'm not sure if you could pick up on that, but the sheen has gone down a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to repeat that process with all my pieces. Okay, and there we go. Right, so now the last step before we can actually assemble them is going to be to take a drill and to drill these. Okay. And so generally I would recommend your pieces to be at least 1/2 centimetre thick if you're going to attempt to drill long pieces. Or just, you know, thick pieces that are not a very quick, easy drill. And I'd start out with a fairly small drill head. Make a hole on one side, move to the other side. Make a little hole on that side as well, and that is going to be your meet-up point. Okay. Then I like to hold it on its side and then just begin drilling very slowly. Like so. Okay, and once I've gone what feels to be about halfway, I'll go to the other side and I will drill as well, so that we meet up in the middle. And this prevents us from getting skew holes, because if it is skew, then it will be skew in the middle. It's not going to appear or hang skew. Okay. And then I'll just drill the rest of the way with it front and center like this. It helps me eyeball it better. Okay, we should be meeting up any moment now. Just give it a moment or so. Okay, and I think we've punctured through. There we go. I just need to clean it out. So this does take a bit of time. There we go. But once you get it going, it is pretty straightforward. And then just run your drill through a few times just to clear out that passage. And you're going to need to brush off the little bits that are left over. Just going to rub that off, and there we go. And I want you to repeat that with all of them. Okay, and so now that they are drilled, we are going to move on to the stringing. Now I have a piece of black Acuflex here. Any black cord, thin black cord will work. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to start stringing my pieces. And now I have not attached any cord ends to the ends of my cord, because I find it easier to make sure that I have even beads on each side, and that it's easier to get things in the middle, and I'll explain that as I go on. And now I've got little 4mm round white howlite beads here, which I think work really well with the project, because they've kind of got some grey and black mixes in them. So try to find ones that have some nice patterning on them. And when you're stringing, just make sure that you're stringing these beads in the right order so that the leaves match up. Because if you don't, then well, it was kind of pointless going through all of that work in the beginning to make sure that they all matched up. And now some of these pieces are a little dirty, but I am going to just give them a quick brush off when we are done stringing. Okay, and so once you have finished up stringing this, I will show you the pattern that I want you to put on either side. Now bear in mind, this is my own design. Feel free to copy it if you want, but you do not have to follow it exactly. Keep in mind that I am going for like an autumn theme here, but you could just as easily make these leaves green and go for something that looks more summery, or even blue with the alcohol ink. Play around with the different alcohol ink colours to create something different. So if you don't have the right beads in your inventory, you can always just change up the colours of the alcohol ink beads here and come up with something different. Now I'm going to switch over to 6mm round white howlite beads, and this black here is a 4mm round black onyx. And I'm going to just repeat this pattern where I have where I alternate between the 4mm round white howlite and the 6mm round white howlite, just to give it some interest. And I'll just continue up a little bit of the way, and then I will make sure that I have the same number of beads on the other side. And then once I've basically reached the point where the necklace is the right length, then I will attach my cord ends. Okay, so I've strung them out to the point where they are almost finished up, and now I'm going to be taking true crimp beads and two, I do believe they're called bulldog crimps as well, clamshell crimps, yeah, bulldog crimps, clamshell crimps or charlotte crimps. just going to pop the clamshell crimp down, then the normal crimp bead, and then I'm going to take my crimp, my pliers, and I'm just going to squeeze that crimp right up here. And I'm not going to worry about closing that clamshell crimp just yet. And then I push that so it's all the way up, and this just gives me a little bit more tail to work with over here. And string on that clam again, then the crimp bead, and then crimp that nice and tight. And there should be a little bit of slack, but there shouldn't be any open ends. Then grab a pair of snip pin pliers and just trim off those tails. And then you can very easily close this. I'm just going to position that crimp. There we go. And close that little clam crimp so those two loops meet up together. There we go. Repeat on the other side. Just quickly and easily close that up. And there we go. Then I'm going to take 2 jump rings and a clasp, and I'm just going to grab one that matches with the kind of theme that we have going on here, which is kind of a plant theme. So I'm going to go with this little cord, not cord, clasp. And I'm just going to open up that jump ring, thread it through the loops, and attach my clasp and close. Repeat with the other one. Just open up that jump ring, thread it through the loops, attach your clasp, and close. And that really is how simple it is to finish it off. Very simple. And it creates a really beautiful effect. So just quickly grab that, and I'm just going to quickly brush these down. And there we go. That is basically it. So it's a really fun tutorial. It's easy to create. Because we include the alcohol inks here, you can play around with different colours. Purples, greens, blues, greens, I said greens already. You could even do browns. There's lots of different ways that you could use the alcohol inks. Even if you don't have alcohol inks, you could also just leave the white clay plain white and it would look really nice. If you wanted to colour and you didn't have alcohol inks, well, that top clay is still raw when we embed the leaves just after we've cut out the pieces. You could paint or brush over some pastels, and that could work as well. And then you would do the same on the back, and then you would antique it like before. It would be a slightly different process and it would look definitely quite a bit different, but that's another way that you could colour it if you didn't have any alcohol inks. Don't use paint though to colour it, because it's just not going to look that great. And also, because of the way we did the backs, you could also wear this as a reverse. Personally, I prefer the other side. I definitely made it so that the other side was the way to wear it. But if a piece flips over, or if you just want it to look slightly different, you could always just wear it like this. Again, the backs don't have to look like this. You could use a simple piece of sandpaper to texture it if you do not have the leaves to create those veins. But again, it's just another way to finish it off. So, I do hope that you enjoyed the tutorial. Please let me know in the comments below, and if you have photos to share, please do look up my group on Facebook. It's called Jessimo Tutorials Community, and post your photos there so that I can see what you guys have made. And as always, I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.